To anyone who's listening, please be welcome. We are Abel Jimenez, Ana Raga, Miguel Angel Prats, and Julian Chis, and this is our history project of the classical world. We are going to cover ancient Greece, particularly the periods that comprise ancient Athens and the Seleucid Empire. So please prepare yourselves. We hope you enjoy this presentation, and let us begin, for these are times of ancient Greeks, of hellenes. First of all, let us see which are the aspects that we're going to cover. As we've said, we are going to talk about ancient Athens, so we are going to see the revolution, its golden age, and an empire of the mind. Finally, we are going to look at the time, empire, and resistance, which attains to the revolution of the time measuring systems that occurred during the Seleucid Empire. In any case, let us return to the revolution. We're going to talk about its origins, about the influence of Pisistratus the tyrant, about Miltiades, Clisthenes, and the revolution itself, and finally, the birth of democracy, an experiment. In the Golden Age, we are going to cover the Persian menace, Pheidippides and the message to Sparta, the famous Battle of Marathon, the event of the Wooden Wall, the Battle of Salamis, and finally, the way in which the Golden Age of Athens began. Next, with Empire of the Mind, we're going to cover what happens after the Golden Age is enacted. What will bring down this Golden Age? We will have a great conflict, the Peloponnesian War. So we're going to cover the basis of the conflict, a gathering storm, Socrates, man and philosopher, the war and its course, the death of Pericles and the crisis of this democracy that has been formed, the Sicilian expedition, and finally, the great debacle and the end of Socrates and the death of free thought. The last of the documentaries goes to the Seleucid Empire. We abandon classical Greece and we go to the dawn of the Hellenistic age. We are going to talk about the way in which time is measured in a new way. It is the revolution of the Seleucids. We're going to talk about the unity of this empire, about the archives of Seleucia, and about the way in which chronology became a fairness guarantee, and finally, the connection that there exists between the development of the concept of apocalypse and this empire, the Seleucid Empire, and the way in which it redefined what time meant. Let us then begin, and again, we hope that you enjoy this presentation.
The Ancient Greeks Crucible of Civilization, Episode 1 Revolution. This documentary narrates the glory of Greece, which is regarded as the mother of Western civilization. Firstly, it explains that Athens was nothing more than a rural town in which a series of wealthy families, the aristocracy, ruled without caring what other citizens thought or suffered. Greece was divided into various city-states that looked after their own interests. The city of Sparta was always a constant threat since they were a very militaristic and organized society. With the support of the Athenian people, Pisistratus overthrew the oligarchy and imposed a tyranny. His different measures helped Greece grow economically, thanks to the export of olives, oil, and other local products. After the death of Pisistratus, his son was unable to continue the prosperous reign of his father and was overthrown by Clisthenes, an important personality of the Athenian high aristocracy. Him, in turn, would be punished by Miltiades, who acquired the help of the Medes Spartan army. Finally, in 508 before Christ, there was a people's revolution that brought Clisthenes from ostracism to Athens, so that he could start a revolutionary government. He decided to set up a democratic assembly that would meet regularly to vote a white stone for yes and a black stone for no about the consent or plural of the people. Through this simple voting process, the world's first known democracy was established. In fact, this democracy was even more involved than the current existing ones, since in Athens the citizens really matured and participated actively in politics. Thanks to these developments, Greece would soon become a prosperous growing country, even threatening its neighbor, with Persian Empire. In my opinion, this documentary is very good for contextualizing the beginning of Greek democracy and understanding what it entails.
The Ancient Greeks, Crucible of Civilization, Episode 2, Golden Age. In the 5th century BC, an important event happened in Greece. Athens faced the Persian Empire, headed by Darius the Great. This decade-long conflict put to the test in the Athenian democracy. Two men participated in this part of history that changed the world: Philippides and a soldier that ran from Marathon to Sparta to ask for help. According to Herodotus, the Spartans refused to join the conflict. Still, the Athenians won the battle and the Persians fled humiliated. Themistocles knew that the Persians would not give up easily, so he convinced the Athenians to build a fleet with which to fight and defend themselves. While the Athenians prepared, Darius the Great died, leaving the Persian Empire to his son Xerxes. Seeking revenge, he gathered a great army and challenged the Greeks again. Having learned of Xerxes' army, the Athenians panicked, and the oracle of Delphos told them to flee. Themistocles, nonetheless, remained calm, as he interpreted from the oracle's words that the navy would save Athens. They prepared to attack the enemy, and Themistocles ordered the city to be abandoned. Taking the fleet strategically, he sent an accomplice to trick the Persians into thinking that the Greeks were fleeing and thus exposed. However, when the Persian ships entered the Strait of Salamis, the Greek navy, composed mainly of triremes, rained and sank 200 ships of the rival fleet, putting an end to Persian naval supremacy and deciding the course of the war. Greece had been victorious and now owned the Mediterranean with no threat of relation from the Persians, who had been humiliated. Now comes the golden age of classical Greece and especially of Athens. Pericles' rise to power would allow the growth of both the city and, and its culture. The foundation of our Western culture were laid down and democracy rose to the new age. No longer would the police actions be decided by tyrants. Ostracism would ensure that no man could challenge the system by himself. Soon, however, ostracism would become a political weapon. Themistocles himself would be banished from the city, he said, and would die in Persia, at the service of his great king. In my opinion, the documentary is entertaining and puts you in context to the beginning of the history of Athens, telling in detail the battles of Marathon and Salamis.
The Ancient Greeks, Crucible Civilization, Episode 3, Empire of the Mind. The documentary speaks of how Socrates lived and died questioning everything that happened around him without being carried away by the opinion of other people. It talks about how Pericles started the Peloponnesian War in search of glory and wealth, thinking that his brilliant plan to defeat the Spartans would work. To achieve this, he erected an imposing wall from the city of Athens to its port in Piraeus, in order to supply the city from Egypt and its colonies, thus denying the Spartans their long-awaited land battle in which all their strength resided. The latter, taking a fleet, had no choice but to besiege the city without being able to definitively cut off the supply lanes by sea. At first, everything went according to plan, but without Pericles being able to predict it, a plague spread through the city brought by wet shipments. Quickly, more than a third of the population succumbed to it. Pericles himself fell victim to it. After that, the leaders of the city allowed themselves to be carried away by the will of the masses. In the end, overacting by pride, believing that they could launch a campaign in Sicily and turn it into a tributary quickly and easily, they lost more than 50,000 men and a large part of their fleet. Faced with this, the Persians provided the Spartans with money to build a fleet and cut off Athens' supplies, which finally led to their defeat. After the humiliating peace, they saw the for their defeat and blamed Socrates. He never hid his opposition about the war. He was not swayed by the opinion of his neighbors and continued to defend his stance against war in favor of reason. Eventually, he was condemned to death for perverting morality, putting an end to the life of one of the greatest philosophers of ancient times. In my opinion, the Athenian plan was doomed to fail from the start, and Socrates did nothing more than express that truth out loud, a truth that none of the Athenians wanted to see.
Total history, time, empire, and resistance from Alexander the Great to the end of the world. The birth of the Hellenistic Age was the result of Alexander's ambitions, and it was inaugurated by the collapse of his empire in the wars of the Diadochi. In ancient times, historical knowledge was measured in three ways: by unique events, by annual offices, or by royal life cycles. This changed in the Seleucid Empire. Seleucus' first Nicator established a starting date in 311 before Christ, year in which he retook Babylon, and his successors would carry on using the same system with the same beginning date, enacting a new and revolutionary time reckoning system based on a clear and unbiased chronology, except for its beginning date, the Seleucid system. The relevance of accurate dating in an empire, however, goes far beyond the creation of a chronology. It is a landmark of cohesion and unity, which was much needed in Seleucus' domains. Despite the multicultural and multi-ethnic nature and the religious diversity of the Seleucid Empire, the establishment of a temporal line provided a common sense of belonging to its inhabitants, despite their differences. In Seleucia, capital of the empire, there remain vestiges of the ancient archive building of the empire. It was a monumental corridor with an extension of 154 meters, and in which the experts estimate there were over hundreds of thousands of documents. These documents were ordered systematically following a chronological order. The papers were rolled and sealed with a clay sigil, whose most striking feature was the presence of the year in which it had been written. The recorded ones include legal arrangements, official government documents, pieces of literature, and even historical records. This comes to show how this new dating system allowed to take a look into the past, accurately examine the present, and prepare for the future. In the context of trade, we find that while in the rest of the world coinages and guarantee marks consisted of ideological symbols and important figures, in the Seleucid Empire, the symbol of fairness was the Seleucid era year, sometimes associated with imperial symbology, but often standing alone. This means that the value of coins, measures, and bureaucracy was subject to the Seleucid year and recognized as such universally. It seems likely that this new system could have also influenced the many apocalyptic writings from the era. The new conception of a linear time and the dislike of the Seleucid authority could have inspired a prophetic interpretation of time, independent from the empire and subject to divinity. This could be the case of the Maccabean revolt or of Daniel's book, particularly of Belshazzar's feast episode, in which the end of the king's time is associated with the succession of time, trade units, and fortune. Finally, in my opinion, much can be said of the Seleucid era system. It was undoubtedly a great advance, perhaps almost accidental, that forced the birth of a new understanding of the concept of time. Paul J. Gosmin provides an interesting approach to a poorly studied aspect of an empire often neglected by the academia. This documentary comes to reflect the importance of establishing an accurate timeline in the study of history. Most of the events of antiquity have been transmitted in obscure terms which we've had to reformulate in order to establish a coherence derived from shape and order, so as to be able to understand them correctly. And finally, we arrive thus to the end of this project. We hope that you've enjoyed it.
Sophocle a-t-il conçu que le Némésis attendait à Babylone le destructeur de Thèbes, puis l'Héracleuse et d'Oedipe. La seule menace qu'Alexandre entend n'est pas celle de prince de l'Indus au milieu de les femmes, c'est celle de Calistène de la Grèce. Tu n'es pas un dieu,